Kenya has borrowed close to 4 trillion shillings in the last 3 years and 2 months. And according to the rules of Kenya, the money we borrow should go directly into capital expenditure, which is development. So before we launch grandiose plans of trillion funds, can we first face Kenyans, and can the government face Kenyans and tabulate how they have used the 4 trillion Kenya shillings Kenya has borrowed in the recent past? And I've put it into context. I'm repeating it because it doesn't seem real, but it is the reality. That the 4 trillion Kenya shillings Kenya has borrowed is enough to have made education free, both basic and tertiary. And the change that remains, even if we divide out of the 290 constituencies, we should be having 12 billion worth of completed projects across the country. 12 billion worth in every constituency means 100 kilometers of road in every constituency in Kenya at 70 million per kilometer. That is highway standards. We should be having a 1 billion worth of a water project, a 1 billion worth of an irrigation project. We should be having over 200 schemes completed, electricity rectification schemes, and still we'll be remaining with change. If we can't explain to Kenyans the money that has already passed through the government hands where it has gone, what is the business then of coming to again sell grandiose plans of trillions of shillings when we can't account for what we have already received, and especially through borrowing alone? And lastly, out of the close to 4 trillion Kenya shillings we have borrowed, everything that Kenyans are seeing is not part of that money. Every ongoing road project in Kenya, especially completion of the road projects that are ongoing, that's a separate loan called securitization, which is illegal. When you see stadiums being constructed in Kenya, that is also not part of this 4 trillion. That's another borrowing called Talanta Board. When you hear about a program called Nyota, the one for alleviating unemployment in terms of the youth, that's also not part of that money. That's money we are receiving from World Bank. So Kenyans deserve to know, before you tell us about trillion funds that you want to launch, can we first account for the 4 trillion Kenya shillings the country has borrowed in the recent past? Very lastly, it is important for us to be data-driven as leaders. You know, we keep saying that 10,000 kilometers of roads were constructed from 2013 to 2012 in Kenya. That is incorrect. And I would challenge the government to actually tabulate the roads that we keep hearing of 10,000 kilometers of road. Because I know, and I have the data, it is less than a third of that. And I also want to put it very clearly. And anyone with a conflicting facts can table them. I have said that, and I have stated that we have borrowed close to 4 trillion Kenya shillings. But if you you do fact finding, how many kilometers of road has Kenya built from 2022 to date? And especially from newly signed contracts. Newly signed. It is less than 1,200 kilometers across the country. It is less than 1,200 kilometers of tarmac road we have built from 2012 to today out of newly signed contracts. So, my challenge is accountability. Before we talk about trillion shillings plans and funds, it is important we put into context to Kenyans that you have already borrowed 4 trillion shillings, and Kenyans deserve that money to be accounted for. And that is my challenge. That I hope in the launch of that fund, the first preamble will be about being accountable for the amount of money Kenya has borrowed, because this is the burden for Kenyans today and also a burden for Kenya.